Hello, and welcome to the Megan Taylor Creator Podcast, a show for entrepreneurs looking to grow their business with digital marketing. In this episode, I'll be talking about my tips on how to get started with email marketing. Let's get started. In the last episode of the Digital Marketing for Beginners series, I spoke about SEO and how SEO works. And in this episode of the Digital Marketing for Beginners series, I wanted to change gears a little bit and talk about email marketing. Firstly, because I've been doing a lot of email marketing, it's been taking up a lot of my time recently. A lot of my clients have really invested in it. So therefore, I've also been quite invested in it. And also because like SEO, it's one of the first digital marketing channels that new business owners tap into, mainly because it's relatively low cost in most cases when you first start out. It's free depending on how serious you want to take it. And also it's something that you can grow and work on over time. And I think most business owners understand that. And so to do that, they get started from the very beginning. And also, especially if you're a service provider, email marketing is incredibly important to generating high quality leads who are really interested in what you have to offer. And the same can be said for product based businesses as well. So I just wanted to give my tips on how to actually get started. This is going to be more focused on the very basics of email marketing. So if you're expecting an episode on how to look at your email list and break it down into customer segments and create different campaigns, like nurture campaigns for customer segments, this isn't going to be that episode. I may make that episode in the future, but for now we're just going to talk about how to get started with email marketing and get started building your own email list for a service or product-based business. Now that we're done with introductions, let's just get straight into it. The first thing to talk about when it comes to getting started with email marketing is finding the provider that's going to meet your needs. And everyone's requirements for email marketing is going to be different. It really entirely depends on what your goals are and what you plan on creating. So say, for example, if you're just planning on creating like a monthly or weekly newsletter to keep your subscribers up to date with what's going on in your business, you can pretty much go with like any provider, and it's just a matter of which one you find easiest to use. Whereas if you're looking to get a bit more complex with it and start to create like nurture sequences and things like that, then you will also need to consider that and look at what's going to be the most cost effective for what you're wanting to do with email marketing. And there's also the cost of essentially the way that most email marketing providers work is they'll charge largely based on how many subscribers you actually have, and that cost will continue to go up. The more subscribers you have, the more your cost will be each month. In the very beginning, that's why your cost is going to be minimal. I think a lot of email providers tend to offer free options for those who have under 350 subscribers, whereas if you've got like an email marketing list of say 7,000 to 10,000, then that's probably when it's going to start to cost you a little bit more. So just be aware of that. If email marketing is something that you think is really going to be instrumental for business growth, then you really need to consider what provider is going to allow you to grow in the way that you want to. But also there's a lot of different features and how user-friendly email providers are. So for example, one of the major players in email marketing is MailChimp, and I've tried to use MailChimp for my own business before, and I've used it as an in-house marketer for other corporate companies and just for client work, and I am not a big fan of MailChimp. I think that it's quite archaic and it's just a bit of a pain to use. Doing simple things isn't as intrinsic as, say, a more modern service provider like ConvertKit, who allow you to drag and drop and create nurture sequences seamlessly. So you have to look at how experienced you are with creating emails and whether that email provider is going to allow you to create content efficiently, because email marketing, it can be something that's done very quickly. You don't have to spend a lot of time in it, but making sure to prioritize just a little bit of time to get your newsletter sent out is really crucial. So choosing the provider who's going to allow you to create your content really quickly directly within their email setup, that's going to be incredibly important to ensuring that the provider helps you grow. Once you've chosen your email provider, you will also want to look into creating a lead magnet, and a lead magnet will be different for the sort of business that you're operating. For example, a service provider may choose to focus on offering free content like an ebook or a white paper or a course, a video course, for example, whereas a B2C product-based business will likely focus on offering special discounts for their customers as an incentive to subscribe to their mailing list. And that's essentially what a lead magnet does. But you can't just create a lead magnet. You also need to, I personally think you also need to create a sequence that goes along with that to essentially get the customer engaged in whatever you're offering them, and then to show them how it can help them, what the transformation is, and then start to drive them towards making a paid conversion. So choosing a lead magnet that's going to be right for your target audience is essential here, and that is the thing that you need to think about the most. So what my business, a digital marketing agency that focuses specifically on content marketing, what my business does for lead generation and what they choose as a lead magnet, it's going to be very, very different, even from another marketing agency who, say, specializes in SEO for like tech-based companies. They may actually decide to do like a white paper, whereas I've decided to do things like templates, like social media order templates, content calendar templates, for example, that will help my audience. Whereas an SEO based agency whose target audience is primarily tech, they're going to be way more interested in data driven content. So just bear that in mind when you're choosing it. And also not just the content in terms of the topic and what, but also what you decide to make as well. So I know 2 or 3 years ago, ebooks were really popular, but the thing about ebooks is that they're very time consuming depending on what you want to achieve with the ebook. So I worked for a fintech startup who created like a 100-page ebook, and it took them so much time without much reward. So you need to think about, okay, am I in a place where I can sit down and write like a 100-page ebook, or is creating a template that's maybe going to take me a couple of days more viable for me? So that's also another factor to consider as time and resources, and also something that you think you can create and you can genuinely create well. I think that a lot of free content that businesses use for lead magnets, they're not very good, but I think that you should actually be focused on creating the best content, no matter if it's free or if it's paid, especially if it's paid. But even if it's free, creating the best content you possibly can with the resources you have is critical to actually engaging your target audience. So don't just create something for a couple of hours and call it a day. Really put time and energy and thought into it, and then once you've done that, you can just put it on your website and you shouldn't really have to think about it again. You may want to change it depending on feedback, and you may want to add things as well, but for now, just put in the effort in the beginning, and then you'll start to see the reward as your target audience realizes how valuable your lead magnet actually is. Now that you've created a lead magnet that you can start to use to promote your mailing list, you'll actually want to consider when you want to send out emails. You will want to start actually creating content. And like all things in marketing, you will need a strategy. And also, like all things in marketing, everyone's strategy will be different depending on your goals. Some people like to create a more informative newsletter that simply tells their audience what what sort of content they created recently. So just like a roundup of what has been going on in their business, and that's going to be it. Like, there's not really going to be much drive. People simply just want to be informed. Whereas if you're a product-based business, people likely subscribe to your newsletter to receive the best deals and news of sales. That's going to be more timely, if that makes sense. Then there's also things like educators and business coaches, where their content for their newsletter is likely going to be way more educational, inspirational. It's going to be exclusive content, because again, that's another incentive to actually getting your subscribers to sign up to you. I think that's the most important thing to take away here. Whilst you can repurpose a lot of content in the form of content curation, a lot of the time it should be, in my personal opinion, exclusive content that you're giving to your newsletter subscribers. Otherwise, there's kind of not really much point in them actually subscribing. So think about what it is that you actually want to say. A lot of small business owners, they have like their own twist on a newsletter, so it'll kind of be like a magazine style, where they give a rundown of everything that's gone on. They give an explanation of what's happened in their week and how this has impacted them and how their subscribers can learn from them too. So I find that's really interesting. Rather than calling it a newsletter, call it something really interesting, like the edit with your name on it, for example, something like that. It just makes it slightly more interesting and makes it feel more exclusive than just someone else subscribing to another newsletter. So get creative with it and make sure that the content isn't bland. The problem I find with email marketing is that a lot of people will stick to templates and then they'll create the same kind of newsletter over and over again, and that may actually become quite boring to their audience, and that's when you get unsubscribes. So it's important to always stay creative with it and always stay consistent with it as well, because if your audience don't hear from you for a really long time, then why would they subscribe to you? They subscribe to you not just because they wanted your lead magnet, but likely because they wanted to know more about what you have to offer. So actually give them content like you promised them each week or each month. Some people will go crazy with email marketing and they'll do a daily newsletter, which is definitely not sustainable for a lot of us. But over time, you might find that if you've got a really engaged audience who love your email marketing, then that might be right for your business. It's not right for mine, but it might be for you. Always inform your audience as well, because at the end of the day, you are using their information that they've given to you, and obviously you have to comply with GDPR practices and things like that. So always be cognizant of the fact that you are invading their personal space in a way. Obviously they've given you permission to, but they still don't necessarily have to subscribe to your newsletter forever. So just be respectful of that, and every time you make changes, let them know. Even if it's just an informative letter that you send out that's different from your newsletter, if you're going to change your scheduling, you're going to send more or less emails each month, just let them know so that they can expect it, rather than them suddenly getting bombarded with an email a day. That might become quite overwhelming. Once you actually start sending newsletters to your subscribers, you will want to work on creating a nurture sequence. As I alluded to before, I personally believe that every business, if they are going to take time to invest in email marketing, every business should have some kind of nurture sequence. And for some businesses, it may just be a sequence that they put on for everyone. Some businesses may have products or service specific sequences. So they'll segment customers based on what product or service they showed interest in, and then they'll have a sequence specifically designed to nurture that prospect, to pushing them down the buyer's journey and taking action. So I highly recommend it, and it's again one of those things that you can do where you work on it for a week or a couple of days, depending on how fast you write. I write pretty fast, so I can get through that stuff quite quickly. But create a strategy, work on it, spend a lot of time on it, and then over time you won't have to think about it. And then if you've really nailed your messaging and the actual flow of the sequence, then hopefully it should do what it needs to do, which is to nurture your prospects and actually get them to buy from you. So yeah, that's it. That's everything that I have for you today. As I said in the beginning, it's a really basic rundown of how to get started with email marketing, and I try to give a few extra tips here and there there just to give you some insight into how a more well-versed marketer might approach creating a newsletter list for the first time. If you're interested in potentially working with Megan Taylor Creative and you just don't have time to do any of this, which I totally understand, please head over to our website to check us out. You can book a free discovery call over there, or just fill out a contact form with your project requirements and we'll get in touch with you. We currently don't have any paid plans available for email marketing, as I find that each client requirements is very different. It's very hard to put email marketing in a particular plan in that sense. So that might come in the future, but for now it's more of an ad hoc project by project based service. And yeah, if you please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and if you're listening on Spotify, please also follow us over there so that you can be notified each time we upload a new episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and I will speak with you next week. Bye.